As a forensic pathologist, here's what I saw when Charlie Kirk was. The gushing blood points to a jugular vein injury. His arms pulling inward is very typical of decorticate posturing, which occurs usually during catastrophic brain damage. At 200 yards with a rifle, which is what would probably cause that, bullets don't just pass through the neck, they would fragment and destroy everything in their path. With that kind of injury, he would have lost consciousness within seconds and survived for less than a minute and probably felt nothing. Law enforcement always finds the and violence in response to speech is never justified.
The autopsy just landed, and Street Talk says Charlie Kirk didn't feel a thing. It was lights out the second he was hit. This wasn't a messy brawl or a freak accident. It reads like a cold, deliberate execution. Whether you're left, right, or don't care, that single detail flips everything. History has shown that some public figures had a sliver of life after being shot, a tiny chance to gasp, hope, pray. Dr. King fought for hours in a Memphis hospital bed in '68. Malcolm X was rushed to Columbia Presbyterian in '65 after multiple hits, and doctors still fought to save him. But Charlie Kirk? None of that drama. No last stand. No hospital struggle. It was over before he could blink. The description makes it sound anything but chaotic. Precise, clinical, meant to finish him on the spot. Fatal trauma on impact. No miracle window. No slow fade. Just gone in an instant. This doesn't read like a heat-of-the-moment shooting. It reads like a surgical takedown designed to drop him exactly where he stood. Not just silence, total shutdown. No chance to fight. No last words. No dramatic hospital footage for the cameras. That instantness turns the whole narrative on its head, and hand control to whoever staged this. Clean, surgical, ruthless, no witnesses left standing. That's why Candace Owens and Trump are locked onto this autopsy like vultures circling fresh flesh. If the report matches the whispers, they'll scream it from the rooftops. Instant death turns into martyrdom, and movements feed on that. Owens didn't waste a single second dressing it up. She came out swinging hard on her podcast. To her, Charlie Kirk wasn't just gone. He was straight up taken out. Not pass away. Not tragically lost. Executed in broad daylight.
That are telling me that just within 48 hours before Charlie passed away, his top Jewish donors were pulling funding from him, demanding that Charlie take their name off of the building that they had donated to Turning Point. I guess I can figure out who that is, how many people could have donated the building. And then once Charlie was killed, they said, never mind, put it back on the building. Okay? Charlie himself had alluded to a tremendous loss of money coming in, and we'll speak about that more. More people are going to come out with information. This is all inevitable, okay? And I'll also point you in this direction. You guys remember Bibi recently was on a PR blitz, despite the fact that he was fighting this 96,000 front war because it do nothing, okay? He was doing a ton of podcasts in America. He went on to Patrick Bet-David's podcast. He went on to Brennan Tatum's podcast. He went on to the Nelk Boys podcast. Anybody find it weird he didn't do Charlie Kirk?
And she wanted blood, torching anyone she believed was twisting the truth. What set her off wasn't grief. It was raw, unfiltered rage. She even admitted she cried, something she swore she never does, before flipping into full attack mode, calling out political figures and media voices she accused of hijacking Charlie's death to spin their own narrative. She didn't stop there. Owens even singled out a major leader by name, accusing him of flat-out lying about Kirk's supposed last letter and trying to repackage him as some patriotic soldier story. She wasn't buying it for a second. In her eyes, Charlie had been crushed under unbearable pressure, cornered by billionaires and furious donors who despised him for giving a platform to voices they wanted silenced. She claimed that weight finally snapped, breaking him right before his sudden end. And then, right on cue, Trump jumped in, spinning it all into yet another chapter of his own survival saga. Trump wasted no time folding Charlie's death into his own survival script. He framed it as the same dark forces gunning for him, warning his followers that what happened to Kirk could happen to him next. Before long, Charlie was being branded as a martyr in the mega victim playbook.
I can tell you he didn't work alone on the internet because it seems that he became radicalized on the internet. That's just by watching same things that you're watching and hearing. It looks like he became radicalized over the internet. And it seems like he has wonderful parents, brought in a wonderful neighbor, smart guy, great boards, great marks, great student. And then something happened to him over a fairly short period of time. Looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left. There's a lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected. But as you understand, I think, very well from the tone of your question. Thank you very much.
And that kind of framing, it hits Trump's base like a thunderbolt. The imagery only supercharged it. American flags waving right next to Israeli flags. The exact visuals conspiracy feed devour and spin into wildfire anger overnight. Candace was already stoking the flames with raw emotion, and those flag-drenched photos acted like gasoline on the fire. Suddenly, it became a split-screen spectacle. On one side, Owens, furious, unfiltered, painting Charlie's final days as a man crushed under siege who refused to bend and might have paid the ultimate price. On the other side, Trump, seizing the moment, turning Kirk's tragedy into yet another storyline for his own saga. Trump blew Charlie up into more than a man. He turned him into a symbol, a rallying cry for patriots who say they are boxed in and under attack every single day.
Up. Because I am telling you, this is not a battle between left and right. We all thought that at some point. We believed that. You're my enemy, you're my enemy. It is not a battle between Russia, Ukraine. I don't care what your political issue of the day is. What is happening right now in the world and what just happened to my friend Charlie Kirk is a battle of sheer evil versus goodness.
Most other conservative voices tried to stay measured, urging restraint in fact, but by then the viral wave had already swallowed nuance. The momentum didn't wait for cool heads. It steamrolled everything in its path. Social feeds amplified martyr talk until it felt inevitable. That frenzy set the stage for the next act. Then the media storm crashed in full force, and mainstream outlets amplified Erica Kirk's widow's speech on repeat.
Let me ask you, in the conflict of versus Hamas, who's the good guy?
I believe both Hamas and the government are evil, but I think also there is no justification.
Are they equally?
There is no justification for the mutilation of thousands of innocent people and children. It's futile. There is no justification, Mr. Kirk, for invading hospitals, innocent populations, and dragging out a war which is damaging it and the West.
You've made that point, but
it's not a point, it's a moral truth, isn't it?
okay, yeah. It was also a moral truth that the war started because 1,300 Jews were killed and 200 were taken hostage. And when you declare war on Israel, expect a firestorm in reaction. Let me finish, I let you talk.
Her lines about carrying Charlie's mission forward landed heavy, crafted to turn grief into purpose. Those soundbites became the narrative backbone, replayed across cable in clips that trended for hours. The optics fused grief with politics, fueling both sympathy and speculation. Suddenly, the private pain was public property, and the story only intensified. But online, it wasn't the polished headlines or widow speeches that set the tone. It was Candace's rage clips. Her fire, her accusations, her vow to call out anyone daring to slide into Charlie's spot. Those raw moments replayed everywhere, breaking timelines wide open.
And some people would accuse of wanting to ethnically cleanse. Some people in the government are saying, again, it's all over the place, right? You have opinions all over. In your opinion, what would a good outcome 5 years from now be, and how does one respond to the claims of ethnic cleansing?
So ethnic cleansing, the idea, presumably, that population movement is equivalent to ethnic cleansing. I think ethnic cleansing is a term that's been fairly recently coined to describe population movement during war. And the reality is that's been ongoing for literally all of human history. The idea that is, quote unquote, forcing people out of the Gaza Strip, that is not the stated policy of the government. The idea is if people want to leave, they can, but they're not being forced to.
Owens wasn't simply mourning. She was planting her flag. She positioned herself as a gatekeeper of Charlie's legacy, daring any donor, ally, or politician to challenge her claim. That's the spin war unfolding live. Trump elevates Charlie into a mega martyr. Candace crowns him a martyr for truth. And the public? They are left in the middle, forced to pick sides while grief blurs into conspiracy and the narrative fractures into camps. But here's the kicker, the detail that set blogs and group chats on fire. Whispers exploded. Was Charlie's death random, or did it come with enormous fingerprints all over it? The rumor mill is ruthless. They say he crossed some seriously powerful players, and that theory refuses to die. I've dropped hints already, but from now on I'll just call them that blue country in the Middle East.
However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti.
For years, Charlie was one of their loudest boosters. You couldn't put him on stage without him hyping their name at every turn. He fundraised with their allies, posed shoulder to shoulder with top lobbyists, and defended their policies on campuses like the poster boy for their cause. Then, about a year ago, the Polish began to peel, slow at first, then glaringly obverse. The shine cracked and the warmth cooled, small at first but impossible to ignore once it spread. People started whispering that alliances frayed, that donors and operatives grew impatient with his loud, unfiltered support. That's when the rumor mill found oxygen, crossed interests, bruised egos, and the kind of enemies who don't forget slights. Once that narrative took hold, every suspicious detail got reread through a darker lens. Suddenly his enemies didn't just look annoyed, they looked like they had motive, means, and maybe even a plan. Instead of non-stop praise, Charlie started slipping sharper questions into the mix. Instead of parroting talking points word for word, he began handing the MIC to guests who weren't fully synced with that blue country script in the Middle East. And in politics, even the smallest crack gets treated like full-on betrayal. Fast forward to just days before his death, Charlie sat down with Ben Shapiro, and word as things got heated. He pressed harder than ever, grilling on policy, influence, and who's really pocketing the billions America ships overseas. Watching that interview now feels chilling, like foreshadowing no one wanted to admit. People are replaying those clips whispering. That's when he signed his own check. That's also where Candace Owens' podcast tipped straight into conspiracy. She claimed Charlie was suffocating under billionaire pressure, the exact people who didn't want him cracking open that door. Online chatter goes further, insisting those weren't just wealthy Americans, but heavy hitters tied to that blue country power structure. If Charlie was pivoting away from blind loyalty, that made him dangerous. And history has receipts. Voices who dared to question that region often found themselves smeared, deplatformed, or cut off overnight. The running narrative is clear. Speak too loudly and there's always a price. And in Charlie's case, the whispers say the price wasn't just lost donors. It was 6 feet under. Now, I'm not saying this theory is proven, but just look at the timeline. A year of subtle jabs. That 10 Shapiro sit-down. Candace raging about billionaire pressure. And then boom, Charlie's gone. No struggle, no last words, no hospital drama. Just silence. That's why the streets are buzzing with one raw question. Was this random violence, or a brutal warning shot to anyone even thinking about breaking ranks? Zoom out for a second. If history teaches us anything, it's that the deadliest hits don't always come from outside enemies. Sometimes betrayal comes from inside the house. And that's a shadow hanging over the entire Charlie Kirk story. It's not just about who pulled the trigger. It's about who had the most to gain once he was gone. Charlie wasn't just another campus firebrand. He was a brand, a movement, a multi-million-dollar empire fueled by billionaire cash. He was the centerpiece. Take him out, and suddenly there's a throne sitting empty. Everyone swears they'll honor his legacy, but plenty are already eyeing the seat for themselves. And Candace? She didn't hold back. She flat out warned about snakes trying to slide into Charlie's chair, and that wasn't metaphor. It was a direct shot. She knows how filthy politics gets. One day you're the face of the youth. The next day your allies are already rehearsing speeches, angling to crown themselves as a new leader of the empire. If you think that sounds dramatic, remember, Julius Caesar's downfall didn't come from enemies of the gates. It came from senators he trusted. Betrayal and power always move hand in hand. So here's a Judas question ripping through whispers. Who really benefits from Charlie going silent? Was it the donors grumbling he strayed off script? The conservative influencers chasing his spotlight for years? Or the political heavyweights who'd rather absorb his movement into theirs and risk him breaking away? I'm not saying Charlie's inner circle set this up, but the streets can't ignore how fast those vultures swooped in, circling his empire before the body was even cold. And here's where the timeline twists darker. Official reports say his body was found September 9th, stashed in the back of that Tesla sitting at the impound. But neighbors swear the car had been parked outside for 2 whole days before it was even towed. 2 days. Think about that. A Tesla just sitting there, stinking up the block so bad the lot workers had no choice but to crack the trunk. Do the math, and it points straight back to September 7th, Charlie's own birthday. That's the date people keep circling, whispering that's when it really went down. If that's true, then this wasn't just about erasing him. It was stamped on a symbolic date his fans would never forget. That detail set the internet spinning. Coincidence, or a calculated move meant to send a message? Because if the car really sat there untouched for 48 hours, then Charlie's end was quiet, cold, hidden in plain sight while the world carried on. Stack that next to everything else. A year of billionaire pressure. Candace raging on the MIC. Shapiro clips playing like warning sirens. And then boom, he disappears on his birthday. No final fight. No last words. No chance to clear the air. Just silence sealed inside a Tesla, until the stench forced it open. Meanwhile, Turning Point leadership was already talking continuity like nothing happened, while other mega names dropped tributes that read more like job pitches and grief. And then there's Candace, the loudest voice in the room, swearing she'll guard Charlie's legacy while making it crystal clear she's the one who knew the real Charlie best. But here's the flip, sis. What if there was no Judas, no billionaire plot, no shadowy allies pulling strings? What if it really was just one man, one trigger, one split-second act of violence with no grand scheme? Even if that's the truth, in this world it almost doesn't matter, because perception is reality. Candace, Trump, and the whole movement already stamped it as an execution. And once that narrative locks in, facts don't stand a chance. The spin becomes history in real time, and the myth grows bigger than the truth itself. So tell me, was this a cold-blooded conspiracy, or just chaos dressed up as legend? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're rocking with Drip Zed, don't forget to like, share, and smash that subscribe button for more stories just like this.